Every night, at exactly the same time, the dragon baby climbed onto the windowsill. It didn't matter if it had eaten. Didn't matter if it was tired. Didn't matter if the rain hit the glass hard enough to make the frame tremble. It always climbed up. Small claws tapping softly against the wood. Wings folding tight to keep balance. Head lifting just enough to see beyond the glass. And then, it waited. No one told it to. No one trained it to. It just did. The apartment wasn't large. One room, a narrow kitchen, a window that faced the alley between two aging buildings. Not much to look at. Just flickering lights, rusted pipes, and the distant hum of a city that never fully slept. But to the dragon baby, that window was everything. Because something was out there. Something it remembered. Not clearly. Not in words. But in feeling. Warmth. A voice. A presence that had once been close. And then wasn't anymore. So it waited. Every night. The human noticed it on the third night. He had been working late at the table. Papers scattered, a half-finished meal long forgotten, when he heard the soft tapping sound. He looked up. The dragon baby was already there, perched on the windowsill like it belonged there, still, watching the glass. "Hey!" he said quietly. No reaction. The dragon didn't even turn. It just kept looking outside. The human frowned slightly. "There's nothing out there," he added. Still nothing. Just waiting. He leaned back in his chair, studying it for a moment. It was small. Too small to be alone. Scales still soft. Wings not fully formed. And yet, there was something in the way it sat there that didn't match its size. Something patient. Something stubborn. He watched for a few more minutes, then shrugged slightly and went back to his work. The dragon didn't move. On the fourth night, it did the same thing. Same time. Same place. Same stillness. The human noticed faster this time. He didn't say anything immediately. Just watched. "You waiting for something?" he asked after a while. The dragon's ear flicked slightly, but it didn't turn. Didn't respond. The human leaned forward a little. Someone. That got a reaction. Not big. Just a slight shift in posture. A tiny tightening of its wings. But it was there. The human noticed. Of course he did. "Yeah," he murmured softly. "Thought so." He didn't press further. Didn't move it. Didn't interrupt. He just let it sit there, waiting. By the seventh night, he started adjusting his routine, finishing work earlier, sitting closer to the window, not saying much, just being there while it waited. The dragon baby still didn't look at him much, still didn't respond when he spoke. But it didn't leave either. And slowly, that became something shared. Waiting. Together. On the 10th night, it rained. Hard. The kind of rain that turned the alley into a rushing stream of water and reflections. The dragon climbed up anyway. Same time. Same movement. Same quiet determination. But this time, it trembled slightly. Cold. The human noticed immediately. "Hey!" he said softly. He stood up, walked over slowly, careful not to startle it. For a second, the dragon tensed, ready to be moved, taken away. But he didn't touch it. Instead, he grabbed a small cloth from the back of a chair, folded it, placed it gently on the sill beside it. Not on it. Beside it. An option, not a command. "You can use that," he said quietly, then stepped back. The dragon didn't move at first. Still watching the window, still waiting. Then slowly, it shifted, just enough to press slightly against the cloth. Warmth. The human didn't say anything, but he noticed. Of course he did. Night after night it continued. The waiting, the silence, the small adjustments, until one night, the human couldn't ignore the question anymore. He stood beside the window, looked out into the dark alley, then back at the dragon. "What are you expecting to see?" he asked quietly. The dragon didn't answer, but this time, finally turned its head, looked at him, really looked, eyes tired, but full of something deeper than fear, something like hope that refused to die. The human exhaled slowly, then looked back at the window, at the locked latch, at the barrier that had been there every night, between inside and outside, between waiting and whatever came next. He rested his hand on the frame, paused, then said something simple. "All right." The dragon blinked. He glanced down at it. "Let's find out." And for the first time since the waiting began, the lock clicked softly, a small sound, but in the quiet apartment it felt louder than it should have. The dragon baby froze instantly, not in fear, in attention, because for 10 nights the window had always been the same, closed, unmoving, certain, and now, it wasn't. The human hesitated for just a moment, fingers still resting on the latch. Then he pushed. The window opened with a faint creak, letting in a rush of cold night air. Rain-scented, sharp, real. The dragon didn't move at first. It just stared. At the opening. At the space where the barrier used to be. At the outside it had been watching every night, finally within reach. The human stepped back immediately. Not forcing. Not guiding. Just giving space. "There you go," he said quietly. No command. No expectation. Just permission. The dragon's wings shifted slightly. Unsteady. It leaned forward a fraction. Then stopped. Because the outside wasn't just something to look at anymore. Now it was something to choose. And choice was new. The human didn't rush it. He leaned lightly against the wall, arms loose at his sides. Watching. Waiting. The same way the dragon had been waiting all those nights. After a long moment, the dragon took one small step forward. His claws touched the edge of the frame. Cold metal. Wet from the rain. It flinched slightly. Then steadied. Another step. Now it stood right at the open window. Half in. Half out. The alley below stretched into shadows and flickering light. Water ran along the ground in thin streams. The city hummed in the distance. Unfamiliar. Unpredictable. Real. The dragon leaned forward and let out a soft sound. Not loud. Not urgent. Just searching. The human watched carefully. "You hear something?" he asked quietly. No response. But the dragon tilted its head slightly. Listening. Waiting. The same way it had every night. Only now, there was no glass between it and whatever it was hoping to find. Minutes passed. Nothing came. No answer. No movement outside. Just the rain. The hum. The empty alley. The dragon's posture shifted slowly. From hopeful to uncertain. Its wings lowered slightly. His head dipped just a little. And the human saw it. That tiny moment. The one where waiting turns into disappointment. He pushed himself off the wall and stepped closer. Careful, slow. "Hey!" he said softly. The dragon didn't turn this time. Didn't move away. It just stayed there, looking out at something that wasn't coming back. The human stopped a short distance behind it. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "whatever you're waiting for doesn't come the way you expect." A pause. The rain hit the window frame softly. The dragon made a faint sound. Not a cry, just something small, something tired. The human exhaled slowly, then added, "But that doesn't mean nothing's out there." Silence followed. The dragon didn't react immediately, still staring into the alley, still listening, still hoping even if it didn't know for what anymore. Then, it shifted slightly, not forward, not out, back, just a little, enough to lean its side gently against the frame, not leaving, but not fully reaching either. The human noticed. Of course he did. He crouched slowly, lowering himself to its level. Still not touching. Still not forcing. Just there. "You don't have to go," he said quietly. The dragon's ear flicked. "And you don't have to stay either." A pause. "You just get to choose." That word again. Choice. The dragon blinked slowly. Then, for the first time since the window opened, turned its head. Looked at him. Really looked. Not through him. Not past him. At him. The human didn't smile. Didn't speak again. He just held the moment. Let it be what it was. The dragon studied him for a long second. Then glanced back at the open window. At the rain. At the empty alley. Then back at him again. And something small, but important, shifted. Because for the first time, the thing it had been waiting for every night wasn't outside anymore. The window stayed open. Rain drifted in, light at first, tapping softly against the frame and the cloth beside the dragon. The alley below remained unchanged, dark, distant, empty in the way it had always been. But the dragon didn't lean forward anymore. It stayed where it was, half turned toward the outside, half turned toward him. The human didn't rush the moment. He stayed crouched a short distance away, quiet, steady, not calling it, not moving closer, just present. Because whatever decision was forming now, it wasn't something you forced. It was something you waited for. The dragon blinked slowly, then looked back out the window one more time. Not searching now, not hoping, just checking, as if making sure the answer hadn't changed in the last few seconds. It hadn't. The alley remained what it was, still, distant, unanswered. The dragon exhaled a soft breath, then carefully stepped back, not in retreat, in choice. Its claws tapped lightly against the wood as it moved fully inside again. The open air stayed behind it. The rain, the waiting, the thing it had been holding onto for nights without understanding why. The human didn't say anything right away, didn't praise, didn't react too quickly, because this moment wasn't about him. It was about what the dragon had just decided. The dragon paused on the sill, then turned, fully this time, facing him. There was no fear in its posture, no panic, just something quieter, something new. The human tilted his head slightly. "Hey!" he said softly. The dragon stepped down from the sill. Unsteady at first, its legs still small, still learning. But it didn't hesitate. It crossed the short distance between them. One step, then another, until it reached him. It didn't climb into his arms immediately, didn't demand, didn't cling. It just stopped, right in front of him, close enough to choose again. The human slowly extended his hand, not grabbing, not guiding, just offering. "Your call," he murmured. The dragon looked at his hand, then at his face. Then, without rush, without fear, it leaned forward, pressed gently against his palm. Warm, alive, certain. The human let out a quiet breath he didn't realize he was holding. "Yeah," he said softly. "Thought so." He didn't pick it up right away. He let it stay there, let it rest against him, let the choice settle fully before anything else changed. Outside, the rain continued. The alley stayed empty, but inside, something had shifted in a way that didn't need noise to matter. The dragon climbed into his arms a moment later, not because it had nowhere else to go, but because it had decided where it wanted to be. The human stood slowly, careful not to disturb it. "Windows still open," he said quietly. The dragon didn't react, didn't look back. It simply curled slightly against him, wings folding in, breathing steady. The human walked over to the window, paused, then looked down at the small creature resting in his arms. "You sure?" he asked softly. No answer, just warmth, just stillness. He nodded once, then gently closed the window. The latch clicked again, same sound as before, but this time, it didn't feel like something being shut out. It felt like something being chosen instead. The human turned away from the glass, carried the dragon back toward the center of the room, the place where life actually happened, where food sat half-finished, where warmth stayed longer, where presence meant something. He settled back into his chair, adjusting the dragon slightly so it could rest more comfortably. "Guess you're staying," he murmured. The dragon made a small, quiet sound. Not a question, not uncertainty, just agreement. And for the first time since it had started waiting by the window, it didn't feel like it was missing something anymore, because whatever it had been waiting for all those nights had finally opened the door from the other side. The next night, the dragon didn't go to the window, not at the same time, not with the same urgency. It noticed the hour, the quiet shift in the room, the way the city softened just enough for old habits to whisper again, but it didn't climb the sill immediately. Instead, it stayed where it was, curled near the human's arm as he worked at the table. Small, warm, present. The human noticed. Of course he did. He didn't look right away, didn't make it obvious. But after a few minutes he spoke softly. "You're not going up there tonight?" The dragon's ear flicked slightly. A small reaction. But it didn't move. The human glanced down at it briefly, then back at his work. "That's okay," he added quietly. "No pressure. No expectation. Just acceptance." The dragon shifted a little closer to his arm. Not clinging. Just choosing proximity. A few nights passed like that. The window stayed closed. The routine changed. Not erased. Just rewritten. Sometimes the dragon would still glance at the sill. Sometimes it would pause when the hour came. But it didn't climb up the way it used to. The waiting had changed shape. It wasn't pointed outward anymore. It had turned inward, toward something closer. Then one night, it went back. The human noticed immediately. The soft tap of claws against wood again. The familiar rhythm. He looked up. The dragon was on the sill. Same place as before. Same posture. But something about it was different. Less tense. Less desperate. Just remembering. The human didn't interrupt. Didn't ask questions. He stood up slowly and walked over, stopping a short distance behind it. "Just checking?" he asked quietly. The dragon didn't turn. But its wings shifted slightly. Not tight. Not defensive. Relaxed. It looked out into the alley. The same alley. The same shadows. The same quiet hum of the distant city. Nothing had changed out there. But everything had changed inside. The dragon stayed for a minute. Then two. Then it stepped down. On its own. No hesitation this time. No pull keeping it there. Just a glance. And then a return. The human watched it walk back across the room. Small steps. Steady. Certain. It stopped in front of him again. Looked up. The same way it had the night the window first opened. But now, there was no confusion in its eyes. Only recognition. The human crouched slightly. "Yeah," he said softly. "You know where you are now." The dragon stepped forward, leaning gently against his hand again. The same quiet gesture. The same choice. But this time, it didn't feel like a question anymore. Later that night, the human sat by the window. Not because he needed to, just because he wanted to understand something. The dragon slept nearby, curled up, breathing slow and steady. No restless shifting. No waking at the usual hour. Just rest. The human looked out into the alley. At the place the dragon had been watching all those nights. "What were you waiting for?" he murmured quietly. No answer came. Just the city. Just the dark. Just the quiet that had always been there. He leaned back slightly, thinking, then glanced over at the dragon again. Small. Safe. Not alone anymore. And something clicked. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough to understand. "Maybe it wasn't about what was out there," he said softly. A pause. "Maybe it was about whether anyone would open the window." The dragon didn't stir. Didn't need to. Because whatever it had been waiting for wasn't outside anymore. And it wasn't missing. It was here. In the quiet. In the room. In the simple, steady presence of someone who didn't force it to choose, but gave it the chance to. Morning came differently after that. Not louder. Not brighter. Just easier. The dragon didn't wake with that same restless tension anymore. The subtle urgency that used to pull it toward the window before it even fully opened its eyes. Now, when it stirred, it stayed where it was. Curled into the warmth of the room. Listening not for something far away, but for something close. The human moving in the kitchen. The quiet clink of a cup. The steady rhythm of someone who hadn't disappeared overnight. That mattered more than anything outside ever had. The first time it didn't check the window at all. The human noticed. Of course he did. He had started noticing the smallest changes without trying. The way the dragon stretched differently now. The way it didn't flinch at sudden sounds as much. The way it chose where to be instead of waiting to be left. He set the cup down on the table and glanced over. "You're really done with that, huh?" he said quietly. The dragon blinked sleepily from its spot near the chair. No rush, no tension, just a slow, steady awareness. It didn't answer, didn't need to, it simply stayed. And that was answer enough. Days passed, then more. The window became just a window again. Not a place of waiting, not a place of unanswered questions. Just glass, just light. Sometimes the human opened it during the day. Let fresh air in. Let the city breathe through the room. The dragon would glance at it occasionally, even walk over once or twice. But it never climbed the sill the same way again. Never sat there with that quiet, unmoving patience. Because it wasn't searching anymore. It had found something else instead. One evening the power went out. No warning, no gradual dimming, just darkness. The room fell silent in a way that felt deeper than usual. The city outside flickered unevenly, patches of light, then shadow, then nothing. The human paused where he stood. "Great," he muttered under his breath. Behind him the dragon shifted slightly. The sudden darkness would have startled it before, would have sent it toward the window, toward whatever faint light it could find. But this time, it didn't move in that direction. Instead, it padded softly across the floor, straight toward him. The human felt it before he saw it. Small warmth pressing gently against his leg. He looked down. "Hey," he said softly. The dragon didn't look afraid, just aware, present. It leaned slightly into him. The human crouched, reaching out slowly. The dragon stepped forward immediately, pressing into his hand. No hesitation, no doubt. He let out a quiet breath. "You're okay," he murmured. The dragon made a soft sound. Not asking, just agreeing. They sat like that for a while. In the dark, in the quiet. The window behind them opened just a crack, letting in cool night air. But neither of them moved toward it. Neither of them needed to. The human leaned back slightly against the wall. The dragon curled beside him. Not watching the outside. Not waiting. Just staying. After a few minutes, the lights flickered back on. Soft. Gradual. The room returned to normal. The city resumed its hum. The world continued like nothing had changed. But something had. The human glanced at the window briefly, then back at the dragon. "You know," he said quietly, "you can still go out there someday." A pause. "No one's stopping you." The dragon blinked slowly, looked at him, then lowered its head slightly, settling more comfortably into its spot beside him. Not ignoring the outside. Not rejecting it. Just not needing it right now. The human smiled faintly. "Yeah," he said softly. "Figured." That night, when the usual hour came, the dragon didn't even look at the window. Not once. Because the thing it had been waiting for every night, the reason it had climbed that sill again and again, even when nothing answered, was never really outside. It was the moment someone would finally open the barrier. Not just the window, but the space between distance and understanding. And once that had happened, there was nothing left to wait for, only something to keep. Seasons began to shift. Not suddenly. Not in ways that demanded attention. Just small changes, the air cooling at night, the light in the window softening earlier than before, the city outside moving at a slightly different rhythm. Inside the apartment, things stayed steady. The dragon had grown. Not large, not yet, but stronger. Its wings stretched wider now when it yawned. The steps were more confident, less uncertain. And its eyes, they didn't carry that same quiet, searching distance anymore. They were present, focused, here. The window still existed, still opened, still let the outside in. But it wasn't a place of waiting anymore. It was just part of the room. Sometimes the dragon would sit near it during the day, watching the light shift across the alley. Sometimes it would listen to distant sounds, voices, movement, life beyond the walls. But when night came, it didn't climb the sill. Not once. Not anymore. One evening, the human sat by the window again. Not out of concern. Not out of curiosity. Just thinking. The dragon rested across his lap, half asleep, its breathing slow and even. The human glanced down at it. "You've changed," he murmured softly. The dragon didn't respond. Didn't need to. Its steady presence said enough. He looked back out into the alley. The same place. The same view. Nothing about it had ever changed. And yet, everything had. He rested his arm lightly around the dragon, absent-minded but careful. "I guess I didn't just open a window," he said quietly. A pause. "I gave you a way to stop waiting." The dragon stirred slightly, not waking, just shifting closer. The human smiled faintly. "Or maybe you did that yourself," he added. Time passed, days blending into weeks. The bond between them settled into something quiet and unspoken. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, just steady. The kind of connection that didn't need constant attention to exist. One night, the human forgot to close the window. Not intentionally, just one of those small oversights that happen when life becomes routine. The night air drifted in freely. Cool, open, unrestricted. The dragon noticed. Of course it did. It lifted its head slightly, looked toward the open space. The alley beyond stretched into darkness, unchanged, waiting in its own silent way. For a long moment, the dragon simply watched. No urgency, no pull, just awareness. Could go. Nothing was stopping it now. The barrier was gone. The choice was completely open. It remained there for several seconds. Then slowly, it lowered its head again, curled back into the human side, and closed its eyes. Not because it couldn't leave, but because it didn't want to. The human stirred slightly in his sleep, one hand shifting unconsciously to rest more securely against the dragon's back. A quiet, instinctive gesture, the kind that didn't need to be learned, the kind that came from something deeper. The dragon didn't wake, didn't move away, simply stayed, because staying was no longer something uncertain. It was something chosen. Outside, the city continued, lights flickering, voices fading in and out of the distance, the world moving forward like it always had. Inside, the window remained open. The air moved freely between both sides, but the space between them, between outside and inside, between waiting and belonging, was no longer something that needed to be crossed, because it already had been. A long time ago, the dragon's breathing stayed slow and steady. The human's hand remained where it was. And for the first time since everything began, there was nothing left to wait for, only something worth staying for. Morning came quietly, not with urgency, not with the restless pull that once lived in the room. Just light, soft sunlight slipping through the still open window, brushing across the floor, climbing slowly toward the place where the human and the dragon rested. Nothing rushed to meet it. The dragon stirred first. Not suddenly, just a slow stretch, wings extending carefully before folding back in. Its eyes opened halfway, then fully, adjusting to the light. For a moment, it didn't move. It simply existed there. Warm, safe, certain. The human shifted a little, still half asleep, his hand resting where it had settled during the night, against the dragon's back. That touch hadn't changed either. Not forced, not held tightly, just there. The dragon leaned into it slightly, a small, instinctive motion. Then it lifted its head and looked toward the window. Still open, still free. The outside world waited like it always did. Unchanged, endless, full of things that could be discovered, chased, explored. For the first time, the dragon didn't feel pulled toward it. Didn't feel like something out there was unfinished. It just looked, observed, acknowledged, then turned away, because the question had already been answered. The human blinked awake a few seconds later. "Morning," he murmured, voice rough with sleep. The dragon made a soft sound in response. Not loud, just enough to be heard. The human glanced down and gave a small, tired smile. "You stayed," he said quietly. Not surprised, just noting it. The dragon shifted closer. That was its answer. Later that day, something different happened. The human opened the door. Not the window, the actual door to the apartment. It didn't happen often. The hallway outside was narrow, dimly lit, filled with distant footsteps and voices that didn't belong to either of them. The dragon noticed immediately. It lifted its head again, watching the open space. This was new, a different kind of outside. Closer, more immediate. The human stepped back from the doorway, glancing over his shoulder. "You curious?" he asked softly. The dragon didn't move right away, just watched, measured. Then slowly, it stood, took one step forward, then another, approaching the doorway, not rushed, not hesitant, just exploring. It stopped at the threshold, the line between inside and outside, the same kind of line the window had once been. Only this time, there was no waiting behind it. The dragon looked down the hallway, heard the distant sounds, felt the unfamiliar air, and for a moment, it leaned forward slightly, testing, considering. The human didn't move, didn't call it back, didn't encourage it forward. He just stood there, letting the choice exist, the same way he had at the window. A long second passed, then another. The dragon shifted its weight, looked down the hallway again, then slowly turned around and walked back inside, past the threshold, past the open door, back to where it knew it belonged. The human watched it return, a small smile forming, quiet but real. "Yeah," he said softly. "Thought so." He stepped forward and gently closed the door, not locking it immediately, just letting it rest there. A door that could open again, but didn't need to. That night, the window was closed. The door was closed. The world outside remained exactly where it had always been. But inside, there was no distance left to bridge. No unanswered question waiting in the dark. The dragon curled into its usual place beside the human. Not because it had nowhere else to go, but because it had already chosen. And the human, without thinking, rested his hand lightly against it again. The same way as before. The same quiet connection. Only now, it wasn't something being built. It was something that had already become real. Somewhere deep in the night, long after both had fallen asleep, the wind outside shifted slightly. A soft sound moved through the alley. The kind of sound that once might have called something small to the window again. But the dragon didn't stir, didn't wake, didn't go looking, because whatever it had once been waiting for had already found its way inside.